Arms are very important in bodybuilding. Now, from the judges' point of view, they are definitely not the most important thing. But the judges don't buy the tickets, the fans do. And to us fans, those biceps, triceps, forearms, they're probably the most important thing. That is why Michal Krizo is one of, if not the most popular bodybuilder in the IFBB today. I mean, think about it. Say you're at the gym with all your friends and they are not familiar with any bodybuilders or even bodybuilding, and you see your favorite bodybuilder, say Michal Krizo. You say, Michael, hit a shot for my friends. Boom! They all have a good understanding on what's going on. It's muscle. Now, just say for 1 second, it was 1997 and it was Dorian Yates. And it was him hitting that single arm biceps, I'm sure your friends would think. I'm not that into bodybuilding. So yes, arms are very important. But at the end of the day, Michal Krizo does not win the Olympia title because of the other muscle groups, the back development, hamstrings, glutes, things of that nature. But heck, even from this shot, you can see those massive arms. Look at that, huh? So today we are going to discuss just that. Bis, tris, delts, forearms. The arms. We're going to discuss the arms. And you know me. We are going to rewind the clock. We're going to go back into the dawn of time. Look at this arm. It belonged to Melvin Wells. And he is the first of many arms that we're going to look at today, which make up the greatest arm development in the history of bodybuilding. Melvin Wells competed back in the 1940s. 40s? Are you kidding me? This development right here, this would beat anybody on the bodybuilding stage today. Look at those delts. He competed up till 1954. So even if you say that he was taking some gear, oh, they had gear back then, I'm sure it was very minute. And when you consider diet, gym availability, I mean, these guys had to work for a living. They didn't have TikToks to live off of. What we are seeing here is probably pretty much what a natural physique would look like from Melvin Wells. Next, we have Leroy Colbert, and he had similar arm development. I mean, Melvin Wells and Leroy Colbert, two of the first bodybuilders with maybe 20-inch arms, 20-plus-inch arms. He competed a little bit after, so yeah, maybe there was a little bit more availability to gear and, more importantly, knowledge, know-how, training, things of that nature. Unfortunately, Leroy's bodybuilding career was ended prematurely. He had a terrible motorcycle accident, so him and Melvin actually stopped competing around the same time, even though Leroy much younger. But man, those arms, they will go down in history. Some of the biggest for his time. Ooh, who do we have here? This is Freddie Ortiz. And his arms actually look bigger than the other two guys. They're not, though. He was actually a lightweight competitor, so he wasn't very big. But man, those arms sure were big. Bis, tris, maybe not the biggest delts in town, but forearms as well. Freddie Ortiz, he competed
from 1960 all the way to 1969.
Things of that nature, so a decent career. Oh my soul, look at this little shootout here. It's Larry Scott, of course, and he is showing Freddie Ortiz what is up in arm size and development. But man, Freddie, maybe more cut, maybe more defined in the arms. So two of the best arms of the 1960s. Larry Scott, more known for his arms. Look at the delts, forearms, triceps, everything. If you covered this face up, you would think it was Arnold Schwarzenegger, but even better. So yes, it's not all about pointy, freaky, peaky biceps. This video is about total arm development. Bis, tris, delts, forearms. And in that situation, Larry Scott will go down in history of having some of the best, most complete arms for his time in bodybuilding. And if you're still not convinced that Larry had some great arms, look at this side by each comparison. If you ask me, Larry is taking Arnold to school. Maybe I sized it a little bit wrong, though. Maybe Arnold should have been bigger. Arnold's biceps, he has to be in this video, just based on those biceps alone. Is it Ken Waller just had a little peak? That's weird. But yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, absolutely some of the best biceps of all time. But in terms of total arm development, I mean, he wasn't bad. He won't go down in history of having the best arms of all time. Look at him in this just relaxed position. His delts are just about to bust. And this picture here. Can you imagine if a doink like me or anybody else with little pin arms strapped this on? People would laugh and laugh. But if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger, people will see this goofy machine and think, well, that must work. Probably doesn't. But either way, guys, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he is in this video for good arm development. Delts, triceps, underrated in the tricep development, and the world-class biceps that he is known for. So both Arnold and Larry Scott, 4 of the greatest arms in bodybuilding history. But what would you do if I told you that there was a chap that competed against both of those guys that would just destroy both Larry and Arnold in total arm development? That is my opinion, of course. This is Sergio Oliva. And you could not pack any more muscle on those arms. I mean, sure, there's an argument. Arnold's biceps, a little freakier and peakier, things of that nature. But in terms of forearms, triceps, and even full biceps, Sergio Oliva had maybe the greatest arms, and still, line them up, today's competitors, still probably the best arms ever. Look at him in this rear lat spread. I showed Michael Krizo at the beginning, and you could see the triceps. Look at Sergio's, for goodness sakes. Impressive back, yes, but those arms. Unbelievable. Sergio known for going to restaurants where you'd have to wear a suit. They wouldn't let you in. But they seen Sergio Oliva coming, and they'd always let him in. He always had those traditional split in the sleeve of the arm. You see, a regular t-shirt would not fit this guy. He had to have these shirts specially made. Looks like silk of some kind. Would be worth a lot of money if you could get a hold of one of those shirts nowadays. Sergio Oliva, one of the few bodybuilders to be able to hit this victory pose. And you need big, giant forearms, triceps, and biceps. You need full, total arm development to pull off a move like this. So Sergio Oliva will go down in history of having perhaps the best arms in bodybuilding. Now here is perhaps an unfamiliar face, and I would be remiss not to mention this guy, Bill Pettis. He competed throughout the 70s, and a lot of people say and claim that he had the best arms ever. Better than Arnold, better than Sergio. In my opinion, I do not think so. He never really hit the big time in terms of the Olympia stage, things of that nature. But yes, worth to mention, he had some incredible biceps. But back to the mainstream of the 70s, the Olympia stage. And it was the criteria, in my opinion, that kept guys from developing their arms, like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sergio Oliva. With all due respect to, say, Boyer Coe, Mohamed Makwe, and even the biceps themselves of Al Beckles. None of them came close to Arnold and Sergio. After all, Frank Zane was the Olympia champion. He was the one to chase, and his arm development, not the best. So, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but it seemed like they were holding guys down with the greatest arm development in bodybuilding, like Robbie Robinson. Another guy get away with wearing one of those foolish contraptions. Just a gimmick. But yes, Robbie Robinson, every bit as good as Arnold Schwarzenegger. And for those of you just shaking your head thinking, Mark's Max Muscle, Arnold's arms are way better than Robbie's, take a look. If anything, Robbie might even have a freakier, peakier bicep than Schwarzenegger. And he never went on to win the overall Mr. Olympia title. Frank Zane always placed ahead of him. Of course, if there was a Best Arms title, which there was years prior, Robbie Robinson would have walked away with that one each and every year he competed. Wow. So yes, Robbie Robinson, I guess he wins the best arms in bodybuilding trophy if it's a longevity thing. What is he, 80 years old now? And he is still jacked. Unbelievable. Now, as we entered the 1980s, we had Lee Haney reign supreme. And much like Frank Zane, with all due respect, he did not have the biggest or best arm development in bodybuilding at all, actually. It seemed like, once again, they were holding guys down with very impressive arms. This is Lance Dreher, and he was placing pretty much dead last, if not second to last, a couple of Olympias that he did compete. And look, if you will, at the size of those guns. Lance Dreher, he had a modern day physique, but they were holding him down. For what? I don't know. The criteria, I guess. But Lance Dreher had maybe 20-some-inch arms. Very impressive. Very impressive. Here's Bertil Fox, and pretty much a mirror image of Lance Dreher in terms of timeline, arm size, little bit better placings for Bertil Fox, but still, many would say he was robbed. Those arms, they have to be 30 inches. Well, I mean, they're probably 20 plus. And not just a massive bicep. I mean, this guy's arms were ridiculous. He made Arnold Schwarzenegger look skinny, look like Arnold had spaghetti arms, for goodness sakes. So yes, brutal Bertil Fox, perhaps a little bit of a revival of that 1960s, 1970s arm development we've seen from Arnold and Sergio Oliva. But Bertil Fox, he never even came close to winning that title. Seemed like they were holding those good arms down and not rewarding them. Except in 1983, when Samir Banu won the title. Of course, Samir Banu, he had strong muscle groups all over his entire body. Legs, arms, back, abs, chest, everything. And considering how good he was in all of those muscle groups, kind of makes his arms underrated. Take a look at them. Very separated and massive as well. Here's Phil Hill. No, he didn't have the cuts or definition of a Samir Banu, but in terms of mass, he had just about the biggest arms out there. Phil Hill, look at him from behind. Look at the tricep. Unbelievable. He did not place very well at the Olympia level. He only competed at one, but worth to mention here in the best arms of bodybuilding history. And here is a bloke that you guys are probably surprised to see, Andreas Munzer. He didn't have those massive 25-inch pythons, brother. But they were very sculpted, much like a Samir Banu. And Samir Banu times 10 in terms of definition and cuts. So Andreas Munzer, worth to mention. And so is Thierry Postel. There was many bodybuilders that I wanted to put in this video. Of course, there's time restraints. I can't make this video an hour long. But I mean, Thierry Postel, look at those arms. Now, when you get into the golden age of bodybuilding, or what have you, the 1990s, all of these guys had impressive arms. Flex Wheeler, Dorian Yates, Sean Ray. And yes, Dorian Yates, he had some of the best forearms, good in the triceps and delts. He just had, not the best biceps. I guess Flex Wheeler would be the best out of those three. But Nasser El Sonbody, I would wager to say he had better arms than all of those guys. Just massive and freaky peaky in the bicep region. So yes, Nasser El Sonbody, perhaps the best arms out of, say, the early to mid-90s. Oh yes, what about Kevin Levrone? No, he didn't have the Arnold Schwarzenegger peaks, the trademark front double bicep peaks, but triceps. This is ridiculous. And I bet you this is not a edited in any way, shape, or form. Kevin Levrone, the triceps and the delts on this man, and even the biceps, unmatched. So if you line up all of those top superstars out of the early to mid-90s, Kevin Levrone, perhaps the best total arm development out of all of them. But then you look up and down the roster, the guys that were placing fairly low, and you have Mike Matarazzo. Is this for real? Look at Mike's arms. Unbelievable. I remember flipping through the Arnold Encyclopedia and seeing this picture here of Mike Matarazzo's arms. And I know the conversation of sight enhancement oils will most certainly pop up, so we might just as well discuss it for a second here. From the mid to late 90s, it is questionable whose arms were real, and that is very unfortunate. There was a guy like Manfred Herbal. If you've never heard of this guy, he was a world's strongest man competitor, a very good one. And he had the biggest arms that I've ever seen. But this guy was competing back in the early 90s when there really was no sights to speak of, that we know of anyway. But it was more later on in his career. He didn't even compete in the world's strongest man anymore, but I believe he did juice those arms up. So it was not only guys with weaker arms that were juicing up, so to speak, or slapping on some clay. It was guys with very impressive arms as well. And then you had clay slapped on top of that. So you can take a guy like Markus Ruhl. I mean, this guy here has to have the biggest biceps in the history of flexing. I'm here to tell you. And I just read a comment the other day. Markus Ruhl, he claimed he never used any sights in those biceps. Or at least he said Synthol. Could have used the other one. The bump and pose. Said he used it in his calves. That's it. But I mean, I don't know. One thing is for sure. People do lie. Since lying was invented back in the day, people have been utilizing it. Now let us go back to the mainstream of things, shall we? And have a look at these beauties of arms. Take a look at these arms, mate. These are Lee Priest's beauties. And a more perfectly symmetrical, round, full set of biceps, full forearms, and tricep sweeps I could not dream up. So Lee Priest, folks, I mean, this is as good as they get. And before I made this video, I watched some other ones, seen a lot of lists, best arms ever, and Lee Priest was at the top of many of those lists. So I kind of tend to agree. And just so happens, me and Lee Priest, close personal friends. And I'm just joking. I was on a podcast with him. Another guy I was on a podcast with was old Bob Ciccarello. And Bob Ciccarello, he was never a top 3 Olympian placer, but he is absolutely worth to mention. Look at those biceps and triceps and forearms. Wow. Good old Bobby boy. So a shout out to EPzeronine YouTube channel. Had me on for the podcasts to meet the guys with the best arms in bodybuilding. And then all roads lead to Ronnie Coleman. Did Ronnie have the best arms in bodybuilding history? Well, maybe the best bicep peaks. But when you compare total arm development with a guy like Lee Priest, or even perhaps a guy like Sergio Oliva for his time, Ronnie Coleman was not the best, and I'm not here to upset any Colemanites. I'm just here to tell it like it is, Mooney. And yes, Ronnie did have some nice tricep sweeps, and perhaps some of the best bicep peaks ever. But he was standing next to a guy with maybe more complete arms in Jay Cutler. Those delts, those triceps and forearms. And Jay Cutler, he had some friggin', I apologize for cursing there, but he had some friggin' good bicep peaks as well. So it was nice to finally see the best arms in bodybuilding winning all of the Olympia titles, just like in the 1970s. Or was that the case? Wasn't Markus Ruhl hanging around? Yes, Markus Ruhl, maybe not the most complete arms, but in terms of biceps and delts, look at the delts from the front point of view. I mean, Markus Ruhl, no, not like Larry Scott, very complete, but freakiness. Markus Ruhl, are you kidding me? Is this picture for real? Look at that peak. Wow, that has to be the peakiest, freakiest bicep of all time in Markus Ruhl. But you know what? I'm just as impressed with a guy like Dexter the Blade Jackson. Not a freak by any means. Well, next to a normal person he is, but he had a very complete, balanced set of arms, biceps, triceps, and forearms as well. And then we discuss Phil Heath. Phil, his arms were incredible at all angles. He had the biceps, the triceps, the forearms. You know what the arms are made up of. Delts as well. But they looked so thick and three-dimensional in all of the angles. So Phil Heath, he could actually be up there with your Lee Priests, your Arnold Schwarzeneggers in arm development. His back, things of that nature were so good that I think his arms are actually somewhat underrated. On the contrary, there is a guy like Kai Green who is known for his arms, but in my humbled opinion, I think he is a little overrated in terms of complete arm development. Yes, he had those beautiful bicep peaks in that front double bicep. A little unsymmetrical, I will say, but anyway, he is worth to mention. And then there is the Beast, Rolly the Beast Winkler. In terms of the 2010s, I would suggest that he has better arms than Kai Green and perhaps Phil Fiddler's Fiddle Heath. Look at this shot here. I mean, this is old school combined with new school, I guess. Do they even say that anymore? Oh, look at this little shootout here with Lee Priest. And I think it might be a little edited. This picture of Lee Priest. I think I've seen the original somewhere. But still, that would have been one heck of a pose down between Lee Priest and Boo Bunder, Rolly the Beast Winkler. Big Rammy, I think, should be mentioned for his contributions to the best arms in bodybuilding earlier on in his career. Maybe not so much a little bit later on. Brandon Curry, wow, was he complete. Delts, triceps, you know what the arms are made up of. And the traditional freaky, peaky biceps. We as fans, like I began the video by saying, we love those freaky, peaky biceps. Reminds us of the golden age, the Arnold Schwarzeneggers. And guys like Nick Walker, they are futuristic versions of those arms. So am I saying Nick Walker has the best arms in the IFBB today? Well, it would be a battle between him and Michael Krizo. I think Nick Walker would win the bicep peak battle for sure. Krizo's arms are huge, keep in mind. But you look at all of the angles. Everything has to be taken into consideration. Look at the delts, even the biceps, tricep sweeps, forearms from behind. Krizo would have an edge on Nick Walker. Absolutely he would in certain shots. So depending on what you prefer, if you like the peaks from the front, Nick Walker's your champion. If you like the massive, cartoonish-like delts, forearms, and of course the biceps, swollen biceps, cartoonish from the front, Michael Krizo is your man. So with that, we will bring this one to an end. A couple of current competitors to keep an eye on is Carlos Thomas Jr. One, look at the biceps and triceps on that man. As well as Good Vito, Vitaly Ugolnikov. Two of the best arms, well, four, I guess, of the best arms of the current competitors. So who has the greatest arms, the best arms in bodybuilding history? Well, probably Lee Priest. There's many contenders, but Lee Priest, he seems to be on the top of a lot of lists, including my own, and you may notice a little bit of hesitation in my voice there. I also believe that's Sergio Oliva, for his time. I mean, that guy's arms were unbeatable. Let me know in the comments section below, guys. Who did I miss? Nimrod King? I forgot to mention Nimrod King. All kinds of other great arms. Let me know. Is Lee Priest your favorite? Boo Bunder? Rolly Winkler? Frank Zane? Well, have a great one, folks.